can both impact your credit score in a positive way.
What surprised me that I found out is on a federal student loan, they wait 90 days before they count it as late. And this is to all of y'all that are right in that home buying. You're thinking about buying a home right now, right? And your credit history's not real long. Be careful about consolidating those loans, because if you do, you lose all the previous credit history. So you, by going to college and getting a student loan, get a 4-year good payment history, right? That is huge on your credit.
More than money, it's about empowerment. Welcome to MSI Wealth Chronicles. Today, I want to talk about a subject that we've gotten a lot of comments about, and it's student loans. So I'll let you open us up with student loans. How do student loans, what the comments that we were getting is, how student loans could impact you in a positive or negative way.
Right. I talked to a lot of clients. I've talked to a lot of clients, seen a lot of comments. One of the first things they need to know is there are two types of student loans, and they are vastly different. Mm-hmm. Before we can even get into how they affect you, you understand there's a federal student loan and a private student loan, right? Yep. Federal student loan is going to be, as it says, backed by the Fed.
Yes.
Some things to know. You don't have to have a credit score. They don't even check your credit on it, right? Mm-hmm. It's based on your income. And oddly enough, the less money you make, the more money they'll give you for it, right? On top of that, if you ever default on it, there are different ways to get it out of default.
Yes.
If it becomes a collection, you can get back out by just talking to them without having to refinance it. There's flexible repayment plans, things like that.
Yeah, in other words, they'll reinstate it, right? They reinstate it, take it out of collection status.
And you have multiple things. They can do both, right? And the other one, what surprised me that I found out is on a federal student loan, they wait 90 days before they count it as late.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is.
So it's every 90-day cycles?
They wait 90. Any 1 month they wait 90 days before they pay. They count it late.
I didn't know that.
So if it was month 1, at month 4 they count it late. If it's month 2, it's at month 5 that they would count it late if you were late on those.
Gotcha.
So it's not really a 90-day cycle, but it's 90 days from the month.
Gotcha.
So they give you a huge open area there.
Yep.
Whereas you have private student loans, and those are going to come from banks, credit unions, those type of things. They're not connected to, they're not actually connected to the government, and they're based on you have to have good credit to get them, or you have to have a cosigner, so you got to bring somebody in on that, right? If you're late, it's standard 30 days or else, and if it goes into collections, really the only way to get it out is a consolidation loan. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? So that's really the biggest difference those are the big differences between the two.
And let me ask you this, for our listeners and viewers, do both impact your credit score? Can both impact your credit score in a positive way?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Okay. A lot of people don't realize, all right, so you start college. You've just gotten out of high school. Most people go to college within the first year, right? You get a student loan. Your credit starts there when you get that student loan. Yep. By the time you graduate, 4 years later, you've paid nothing, right? But you have 4 years of good payment history. Because deferment doesn't say it doesn't report. Deferment just says that they will say that you paid on time.
Exactly.
So you, by going to college and getting a student loan, get a 4-year good payment history, right? That is huge on your credit because it affects your amount owed. Right, 30% of your credit, your payment history, which is 35, so we're up to affecting 65% of your credit, right there, and then your length of history. So it's like 80% of your credit. Those student loans can positively affect.
Yep.
I saw a statistic somewhere that people who are first-time homebuyers who have student loans, somewhere between 50 and 75% of them only qualify for a new home because they had student loans.
Wow.
All the rest of their credit is a year, maybe 2 years old, where they have these student loans that are 4 or 5 years old, showing this great payment history. So they can help you out a lot.
And vice versa, though, right? So vice versa, they could also hurt you.
Yeah.
If you don't pay them, what happens?
There's where it bites you, because a lot of times a student loan is not just one loan; it's 2 or 3 loans a year. Over a course of 4 years, you've got 8 to 12 loans, and if you fail to pay that, that's 8 to 12 late pays. That can be brutal on your credit.
So, in other words, with student loans, whether they're federal or whether they're private, treat them as any other bill, right? As your car payment, as your mortgage payment. Pay it on time. You paid on time, it could really help you out, really help out your credit scores. You don't pay it on time, it could really impact your credit scores in a negative way.
Real fast.
Great advice. Anything else that you want to tell us about student loans? So there's 2 types of loans, right?
Right.
Federal and private loans.
And private. Yep.
We also covered that both of them can help or hurt your credit score.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Here's a common question. So let's say someone owes, and let's pick, federal student loans.
Yes, sir.
Someone didn't pay their federal student loans. They're in collections. What can somebody do?
Well, the great news about that is there's several options, and it's something that a lot of people look at student loans, and when they go default on them, they think it's the end of the world, right? The first thing to know is that if it's a default, it's not going to go away. It's the only type of collection that just doesn't go away. But you can talk to your service provider, right? And there's several of them. Navient, there's AmeriCorp, and I know there's another one, Great Northern, or something like that. That is a provider. The easy way to find that out: go get you a credit report. I recommend a couple of different places. One of them is Smart Credit. Check it out. Look down in the creditors. It'll tell you who you have that creditor with. And when you find that out, call them up and talk to them. There's some of them where they can reconstitute the original loan. So you pay a certain amount over several months. And then what they do is they take your loan out of collections.
Yes.
You keep the original account number, why that's important is you keep the credit history.
Yes.
Right? There are people who, I want to buy a home, but I can't. I've got defaulted loans. Not true. Catch your loans up, and they turn into a positive. Now you can buy a house, and that collection actually goes away because you can't have both accounts on there at once. Yeah. So now it looks like you paid it correctly the whole time through.
Yeah.
And now you can buy a house easily.
Yep.
You could, another option is that you could there is a consolidation plan, which basically you pay for a certain amount of time, then they consolidate all your loans into one payment. Now, the only reason that I worry about that one, and this is to all of y'all that are right in that home buying, you're thinking about buying a home right now, right? And your credit history's not real long. Be careful about consolidating those loans, because if you do, you lose all the previous credit history. If you have 6-year-old loans and they're in default and you get them, they will get them out of default. They'll consolidate them, but you may still have those collections left over, and you have new accounts, so you don't have that's a brand new charge. So it's going to be a while before you can buy.
Yep. And I agree with you with federal student loans. If someone has a bunch of collections, federal student loan collections. Yes, that's one of the biggest things with federal student loans is just call your provider. There's so many ways that they'll work with you.
Yep.
And I actually read an article that talked about the differences between federal and private student loans, and they said be careful if you have a federal student loan. They were saying that some students, what they do is they don't like the interest rate that was given to them from the federal student loan.
Right.
So they go to a private bank and get a loan. Let's say they have $25,000 worth of student loans.
Right.
They go to a private bank, they go to a credit union and get a loan for $25,000. Over here, right, they're going to have a lower interest rate with their credit union. And they were saying one of the negatives to that is that there are a lot of benefits to federal student loan providers.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if it ever happened or not, but I remember seeing it, all throughout, the media channels. That the student loan forgiveness. I don't even know if it ever went through. Do you know if they did ever? Did they forgive any student loan debt?
They did forgive.
They went through.
They did, and we've actually had at least one guy that I've talked to.
Okay.
He was not a client, but I talked to a guy, And one of the questions he was asking was in one of the classes
Yep.
that we gave over. I think it was in Hearst. I gave the class, and he goes, "Yeah, they forgave all my debt, and I don't owe anything to anybody anymore." And he says, "I don't even have a credit score."
Yeah. So imagine that. Imagine he, right? Because some kind of student loan forgiveness program came out, he got all his student loan debt forgiven. Imagine if he would have maybe refinanced all that student loan debt, let's say it was $25,000, right? Into a, private, like his Bank of America, his credit union, right? And then all of a sudden, a month later, they launched the student loan forgiveness program. And guess what? It's not going to be, you're not going to be eligible over here with the private bank. You're going to have to pay that full $25,000. But if you would have stayed over here with the federal lender, right?
You wouldn't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So they would have been a lot better option on the other side. By the way, you were asking if they've done anything about it. Currently in the news is one of the conversations they're having about is they're looking to expand that program. They haven't really given any details on it yet, but they're looking to expand that program. And here's my advice. If you got student loans and you're paying them right now and you don't have some other form of loan and you don't have credit cards yet, use those student loans to your best advantage. The reason college students have such ease of getting credit cards, which is where most people ruin their credit, is when they get to the credit card stage, right?
Yes.
That junior year, that sophomore, that junior, that senior year, if they've had student loans, they have 2 or 3 years of good payment history.
Yes.
And they look great on paper.
Yeah.
Like they've been paying their student loans every day, and what it is deferment, right? Well, they get approved for credit cards. When they either get approved for credit cards and they wreck them, or they don't get credit cards at all and they never seem to get them. If you've got student loans, make sure that you build up your credit card history. Like get a card, use it for, I don't know, Netflix, but buy gas with it. Use it once a month. But that's the thing that they need to realize is that student loans are a installment type of loan, which means eventually they're going to go away. But right now they're a huge benefit. Use them to your best to your advantage.
Exactly. So we talked about right now federal student loans. What you could do if you have them defaulted, basically, the best option would be just call your provider, right? So let's jump over to private student loans. If a lot of the comments, right, is our listeners, our viewers, they have private student loan debt that's in collections.
Right.
Can you go over a couple options of what they could do with student loan private, right? So private student loan debt.
Well, private student loans, and they have it in collections and things. The number one thing that you're able to do is actually just do like a consolidation loan. That's not a a promised student loan. That's a consolidate. You get your credit up as high as you can. Go to a consolidation company. Get it to where they can do the consolidation of all those, and then call and try to negotiate a pay per delete.
Yes.
Right? Because the only way they're going to get that off their credit is if they can get an agreement from the guarantor that if I pay this off, no matter how I pay it off, if I pay this loan off, will you remove it from my credit? Because otherwise you are stuck with that.
Yeah.
There really are the benefits to a private student loan is you can get a larger amount and you can get better rates, right? But those rates and everything, the larger amount, are all based on what your credit is.
Exactly.
When it comes to the end of the situation, if you've gone default on a private student loan, there's not a whole lot of options. You can pay them, you can get a consolidation loan to get rid of them, but the forgiveness options, I think
they're down the drain.
I think Fannie Mae is the only private student loan company that gives any option for forgiveness.
Gotcha. Yep.
That's it.
And I want to piggyback on what you were saying. So another option, if you have private student loan collection debt, now this doesn't always work, but you'd have to get with an attorney in reference to this. But bankruptcy,
that will do it. Yeah.
So bankruptcy, right? Chapter 7 bankruptcy is whenever you could include all that debt in your bankruptcy and it gets liquidated.
Right.
Here's a big area that a lot of people don't know about. Can you include student loan debt in your bankruptcy? The answer is yes, but it's very difficult. But the odds are better of you being able to include your student loan debt into your bankruptcy if it's private,
Okay.
a student loan. Okay, if it's federal student loan debt that you have and you want to
Yeah.
include in your bankruptcy, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's almost impossible. You need to talk to your bankruptcy attorney. But if you have private student loan debt, your chances are a little bit higher that you can include it
Right.
into the bankruptcy. So that's another, way of resolving your private student loan debt. If things are really tough, right? You have them in collections. Things are really, really tough. You don't see, financially, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
You need to, perhaps seek a bankruptcy attorney, and that'll be a whole nother series that we're going to talk about bankruptcy, right?
Right.
But
Bankruptcy is a whole thing unto itself.
yes, but there are a lot of benefits to bankruptcy. If you are hurting financially, you don't see light at the end of the tunnel, go speak with the bankruptcy attorney. A bankruptcy, if you qualify, will zero out all your debt.
Yep.
All that private student loan debt, if you talk to your attorney, possibly that could be included in your bankruptcy. It'll zero it out. Credit cards for sure, cars,
Cars,
any
all that, yeah.
any other debt that you have, you could include it in there. Student loan debt is one of the debts that's really difficult for you to include in your bankruptcy. The other type of debt that's really difficult for you to include in your bankruptcy would be anything that's federal, right? Anything that's
Right,
federal,
taxes, that type of stuff, yeah.
Bankruptcy usually doesn't take care of that.
So actually, I actually heard somebody talk about, kind of going off the federal student loans and into bankruptcy. If you are going to ask about that, really what I was told is that it had to do with hardship.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a hardship it showed that if you came out of this bankruptcy, could you survive type
Yep.
of thing. And that's what you have to really talk to. And they're going to probably tell you more if you're talking to a lawyer. But if you want to know the first step, ask the lawyer, with the hardship. If you improve the hardship, can you get that student
Yep.
loan removed? But that's a really thin line when it comes to federal student aid, student loans, excuse me, because it just is really hard to get that off of you. But
Yep.
you can.
Yep. So, quick question for you, Jesse.
Yep.
Me personally, I didn't get any student loans.
Right.
I went to a community college, and that's as far as I got. So, what about you? I never asked you this before.
I did. I had student loans. I
Okay.
went to Stephen F. Austin State University.
Did you go private? Did you go federal?
Luckily, I went federal, to be honest with you. I'm actually one of those cases of somebody who dug themselves out of a real big hole. When I tell people not to get credit cards while you're in college, there's a reason why. I've already been there, done that. When I went to school, it cost about $4,000 to $5,000 a semester.
Okay.
Right? 2.5 semesters a year. You can imagine when I came out of there, I had quite a bit of debt.
Yeah.
Between that and credit cards, it all crashed.
Oh, wow.
It was 10 years later before I turned that back around.
Okay.
Maybe 5. It's been about 5 years
Yep.
after college that I started trying to turn that back around.
And two things. Who was your provider? Do you remember who your provider was?
Yeah,
Federal?
it was federal. Mine were federal. I had one private student loan that my mom was a co-signer
Mm-hmm.
on, and luckily that's the only one that was paid on time.
I mean, the creditor name. Do you remember who the creditor name? Sally Mae?
Navient.
Okay, Navient.
It was Navient was the
for
service
federal.
for federal.
Okay.
Yeah, they were at the time it was Navient. I think they're still around right now, but Navient was the service provider.
Yeah.
And when I reached out to them, we started by bringing my credit my student loans back out of default.
So that's what you do.
Yeah.
The advice, right? The advice that we gave everybody. You called your provider, and they basically reinstated it.
Well, it wasn't that as easy as just reinstating. They gave me a 12-month payment thing, and it stayed in collections for those 12 months, right?
Okay.
So it stayed technically in collections, and I paid on time. And as long as I paid on time at the end of those 12 months, they pulled everything back out and
Nice.
turned them all back on. And when they did, I asked them, I said, what happens with the collections? And they went ahead and removed them.
Nice.
So all the collections came off, and that was completely because, I'm going to be honest about it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I happened to get a really nice human on the other end of the line. And I was lucky with that because they It was a lady, and she took her time to explain what to do. And we started knocking them out one at a time later, but we actually held on to one for a couple extra years because we needed the credit history, to be able to do other things like buy our first house. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I was one of those people who had went to college, built up the debt, went into default on all of them, and then had to take the time to build it back up. But if it would have been a private student loan, I mean, no telling. I mean, I've seen them go for judgments on people, and they still have to pay it anyway at that point. I've seen a lot of that stuff, so I got lucky.
How long did it take you to get everything paid off? I hear all these stories about, from our clients and friends, they have student loan debt. I mean, for years, 15, 20 years later. How long did it take you?
It was a really hard 4 years.
So 4 years after college, it went into default status and you got out?
No, 4 years after college, and then 4 years after I pulled it out of default.
Okay.
So 5 years to pay it off once I started paying it off.
Okay.
And like I said, I was there for, let's see, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $65,000, $70,000.
Yeah, wow.
Is what I had.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and once again, I just don't have that life experience. Do I know federal student loans? I've heard the terms. I mean, they're for years, right?
Well, yeah.
Like literally, I've seen people that have student loans for 30 years. Is that true? And if it is true, does the private student loans do the same thing? Do they? I don't think they would give you 20, 30 years, 15 years, right?
They don't give you quite the length of time, and they also don't give you the same grace periods. Some of your federal student loans, they can be for a very long time afterwards. And but your grace periods on a federal student loans are longer as well. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by grace periods, in case somebody doesn't know, when you graduate from college, right? Notice I said the word graduate, because if you quit college, this doesn't count.
Okay.
They only give you, they give you a little bit of it though with the federal. They give you a certain amount of time when you quit college, and they give you what it was at the time a longer amount of time, and I need to look it up. But when you graduate college, they give you like a year before you have to start paying on the student loans at all.
Yeah.
So they give you that big grace period, whereas with a private one,
it starts right away.
Congratulations. They could make you pay. And that's the thing with any private loan. Yeah. At any time, they can call in that loan. Yeah. Whereas the federal loan is going to be safer.
Yeah. Okay. So any you actually experienced it. Any tips on how you got out that maybe might help somebody out there?
Yeah, it really came down to paying what I need to on most of them, and isolating one at a time.
Okay. Kind of like the snowball effect, right?
Yes. When I paid that one off, and then I paid the next one off, and the snowball effect is when you pay all your extra money to one, and you're paying what you need to with your other loans. Mm-hmm. And when you're done paying that one off, when you go after the second one, you don't up your budget. You just move the money you were paying from the first one to the next one. And it builds up like a snowball going downhill. This is exactly how I got out. Okay. I paid my first one off, and I started with the youngest and went backwards because I wanted to keep the age as long as possible, because somebody had told me age was important at that time. And I paid them off one at a time. My wife and I knocked them out one at a time. It went through. It was a bit humbling to make that phone call. But, when you get married and your wife looks at you and goes, I want a home.
You got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
That's very true.
Any tips on like what got you in that situation with your student loans?
Here's what, and I can tell you exactly why I got into that. Mm-hmm. When I was in college, I wasn't budgeting my money.
Okay.
I wasn't watching my money, and I didn't realize the thing that I'll tell anybody: if you're graduating high school, or you've been out of high school a year or two and you're going to go to college, a budget is something you start day one.
Yep.
Whether you're putting money back to help pay off your student loans at the end, you're putting money back to make sure you can buy a car straight out. When you get a credit card, though, I recommend you getting a credit card as soon as you can. Be careful with it, because that really was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, man, I had 10, 12, maybe more credit cards.
Okay.
And when you didn't have any money and you're in college and it doesn't make sense to you.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that I was that dumb, but I was.
Oh, yeah.
I ran every one of them
A lot of us were there, including me.
And trying to pay off the credit cards, I let the student loans default. And then I tried to pay off the student loans and I let the credit cards default. And it all just went south from there. I felt like I couldn't get a grip on anything.
Yeah.
And really that came down to one day talking to that lady at Navient. She gave me what we needed to do. I talked to a friend of mine that helped me, kind of put a budget together and put a program to knock everything out. And
nice.
bit by bit, it wasn't an easy process.
Yeah.
And luckily I had somebody there. My wife's a saint. That's a good word for her, a saint, because she was there through the whole steps of it. But that was that whole build towards getting to the place.
Yeah, and here we are now, right? 0 student loan debt, and your wife has her house.
Yes, my wife has her house. She has the house. Matter of fact, we got to buy our first house and ended up buying the second one, and she was able to say how she wanted everything in the house.
Nice.
So that all came from just taking a moment. And again, this is not, I really love the saying, it's not about money.
Yeah.
It's about empowerment.
Yes.
Because once I got control of my credit, everything became easier. I didn't have to worry about who's going to send me mail, who's going to sue me, whatnot. Mm-hmm. It just became easier.
Yep.
Sorry, I went off on a rant there.
No, I love it.
But yeah, that's my story on it. Now I recommend, like I said, I recommend to everybody, federal student loans, definitely get a credit card. The day you start college is the day you start a budget, and make sure you stick to it and learn it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. So any other nuggets of wisdom that you want to cover with our listeners
about? One of the things that I want
loans?
people out there with student loans to think about right now is there was one of the service providers for federal student loans, just to tell people why you want somebody checking on your credit. Here's the reason you want to go in there and dispute anything that looks negative. There are 5 million people who were affected by, starting in March of 2020, one of the major student loan providers erroneously reported their payment history for 6 months straight. They marked when it was supposed to, everybody was supposed to be from March 2020 to this point, they were all supposed to be deferred. Right? 6 months of negative late payments.
Wow.
And there's still people who have huge dips in their credit to this day that is about that.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't do anything wrong. Like legitimately, even the provider goes, we will, if we know about it, if you tell us about it, we'll back you up type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, that's that whole point of if you're not checking your credit, if you're not looking at your credit, you need to. Because you could be right now sitting at home and be one of those people that your credit is worse than it should be, and it's not your fault.
Yep. The people behind the scenes, right, managing your credit, they're humans and they make mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the whole reason why we even exist, MSI Credit Solutions. It's because a lot of individuals have inaccuracies on their credit report.
Yep.
And the government has said, if you believe you have inaccuracies on your credit report, it's your right. You could dispute them. And some people, they just don't, have time, to perform that service on their own. And that's whenever they hire us. Yep.
I've always equated that to a mechanic.
Yeah.
I consider us a mechanic for credit repair.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I know how to fix my car.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do that.
Yep.
I will hire somebody else to fix that car.
Yep.
So let me be your mechanic. Let me fix that for you.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. But anything else? Any other nuggets that you wanted to cover about student loans?
No, as far as student loans, just the biggest thing is most people when they look at their credit, at first they don't know if they have a federal or a private. As a recap, start there.
Yep.
Once you find that out, that's going to give you a whole list of different options on that. And just as a little advice, let's say you get on a credit report and your particular credit report, you can't figure it out. Mm-hmm. Call in, ask the people who your personal guarantor is. The term is personal guarantor. If they tell you federal, then you know it's a federal student loan. If they give you the name of a bank, a credit union, or anything like that, you know it's a private loan.
Yep.
And at that point, you know whether you need to look at a consolidation loan or if you can call and see about getting some kind of payment done.
Yep.
And if you're, the last thing I do want to say, and this is one I really want people to know, is if you have student loan debt and you feel swallowed by it, call your provider. Talk to them about a income-based repayment plan. Most of those plans, if you get on them and you pay for like a year or 2 years straight, a lot of them will forgive the debt at the end of that.
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
And so that's the nice thing about a federal loan. I mean, and I know a lot of people give it a bad name. There are options to be able to get yourself into it, and there's options to get out of it. So that's what I got to say. That's all I got today.
And I'd like to say one thing. So I know that some of our listeners might be, students that are just now entering into college, right?
Right.
So from the information that we gave you, if I was in your shoes and I was needing a student loan, I would more go towards the federal versus the private. There's just more benefits, going to the federal side versus the private. And really, I mean, one of the only benefits that I can think of on going with private is you might get a lower interest rate, But over here, we just, went over all the different benefits. There's just too many benefits to try to go over here and get a private loan.
Yeah, no, private loans, really, in my opinion, private loans are more for people who are going back to school than they are people who are going to school for the first time. Yeah, you're right, 100%. Go with a federal loan. Year or two after you have the loan, get a credit card, be careful with it, be nice to it. And then build your credit from there. That's what I would recommend to every new person. If you're entering college today, take care of that loan.
Exactly. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Do you have anything that you want to?
No, thank you very much. So again, thank you for watching MSI Wealth Chronicles, building legacies one episode at a time. If you have comments, please put comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, definitely put those below because we'd love to answer those in the future. Look for us on all our social media platforms and watch us the next time. Tune in the future.